So we're going to start by, going around the table. Probably first introduce yourself, if you're a buyer or a seller, but because it's very obvious for you, but probably not with everybody in the room. And then we're going to have the open dialogue. So please, Stuart. Well, it's easy. I've got two Stuarts. So. Stuart, please.
Thank you, Laurent. Stuart Donnelly, I'm a senior commercial leader in the renewable sector. I'm currently freelancing, mostly supporting investors like funds and private equity on energy transition and infrastructure investment. So seller. And previously I've led on route to market and revenue teams at a major utility across global markets. And prior to that at an IPP. So excited for the debate on this topic.
Okay, so you know what sellers want. Good. Ayça, if I pronounce correctly your name. Okay.
Correct.
So you're a bit the arbiter of everything because you come up with prices and everything. So explain probably, before we go to Stuart number 2, what you understand of what buyers and sellers want. And I guess price is kind of important, please.
Okay. So I'm in a bit of a special position here because I worked both as a seller and buyer before. So I know the difficulties in both standpoints. And the S&P Global, I sit currently with S&P Global Consulting, where we advise energy markets, basically whomever is trying to navigate today in the energy industry from transactions, due diligence, and strategy perspectives, and what they want from each other or what they don't want from each other. The basically seller is trying to hold a position where they keep the investors happy. So when the investors are happy, everybody's happy. Therefore, currently, they are trying to navigate this shift in cannibalization, a bit of unexpected pricing, a bit more granular energy markets, and trying to keep a reasonable return on investment so that they tend to explore like risk sharing models so that they get to pitch a reasonable capex model and like a return on investment to their investors. So that's basically what's keeping them concerned. And from what I've been seeing from buyer's side is basically they want renewable power, obviously, wherever they can have cheap. So that hasn't changed. That has been the case through COVID. That has been the case through natural gas spikes. And a buyer's standpoint has not changed that much. But the risk element to both speaking to buyers and sellers has changed quite a bit in the last few years.
And now, the man who brings happiness not only to us, but to families, Stuart. So, please.
You'll get me on the list. So I'm Stuart number 2, also Stuart Jauncey. I'm head of Renewable Energy at Merlin Entertainments. I'm sure you all know Merlin Entertainments. You've all got a Merlin pass and visit our attractions every year for fun and enjoyment for you and your family. So our goal is very simple. Our board, who is made up of Blackstone, Kirkby and Canadian People's Pension, all very much green investors, want us to do what we're doing and do it quicker and do more of it. So we've got an objective for carbon neutrality by 2030, which is great. And to do that, we've sort of got a bit of a program that says we're going to optimize what we can do on site. So we've got a raft of on-site roof projects that we funded ourselves with some of the people in this room. And we've also done some sort of carports, third-party funded. And we've got in this year, we've gone live in California with 1.8 megawatts of solar and a battery. We've just completed a 3 megawatt in Italy. And just last week, we broke ground at Windsor with a 1.2 megawatt carport. We've got a framework. So we're now in the process of developing projects for Germany, Denmark, the States, Korea, Japan, Denmark. That's what we're doing. In terms of PPAs, which is another part of my role, we see that as an important part of our energy mix. So we'll have the on-site stuff, we'll have some off-site stuff, we'll buy some green energy, and then we'll top up with some EACs. Since then, we've thought, batteries, that's a really good idea, isn't it? We've thought about fuel cells, we've thought about all sorts of things. It could really help our energy mix. Also, part of my role is EV charging. So many of our guests want to be able to charge their EV, and why wouldn't they? We're a destination, so they want a destination charge. So we've looked at that as well, working with partners of what that might look like, which for typically on a big park is somewhere between sort of 500 and 700 EV chargers per park by 2042, 2045-ish, which is a lot of energy. Where's that going to come from? Is it going to come from the grid? We do it ourselves. What can we do with that? So much like the lady just said, what do we want? We're cheap. Energy is not our business. We're in the business of making people happy and providing enjoyment and magical moments. So yeah, we want it cheap. We want it when we want it, not when it was produced. We want everything. We're a typical buyer. Are we going to get everything? No. Would we like to get something? Absolutely. So part of my thing today was to come along and listen to all you guys talk and make some great notes. And now I'm sat here talking to you. I'm still going to make some notes.
Well, thank you. Honesty has a lot of value around this table. So Stuart number 1. Let's say Stuart number 2 say, okay, come here. Let's have a conversation. So as a seller, what do you want to achieve? Knowing that, you heard what Stuart number 2 is looking for. So how would you approach the negotiation?
That's an interesting way to put it. I think it's been said already. I think investments need a business case. Investments need a return. So that's primary thing of what is needed. And if that's not there, then a project will not happen. It's as simple as that. I think from a new investment perspective, I think there's certain things that are needed. A long-term contractual certainty, creditworthy counterparty, fair risk allocation, simplicity and standardization of terms, realistic performance clauses. It's all things that I think have come up in the legal section from earlier. And then I think, ultimately speed and efficiency in decision making, and ultimately a partnership mentality, not a procurement mentality. So there becomes a gap between what is being asked for versus what is being provided from potentially the infrastructure space. I think we have moved a lot over the last decade towards a level of alignment between some of those categories and to be able to strike deals. But fundamentally, I think at the moment, in certain markets, I think that the kind of price point versus ultimately what's needed to make an investment viable, there's an element of a gap. And that creates a definite challenge of how you bridge that. In a market like GB, you've got a huge amount of subsidy. And so there's ultimately an alternative option to sell into. So, for me, in terms of, GB in general, at the moment, I don't see as that exciting a corporate PPA market, because from a developer producer perspective here, they're really drunk on subsidy. They're 10 pints in, and not going to change, and that's been a policy choice, by the way, of course, to be very subsidy focused as a market. But what that's created as an opportunity is, I think, some of the slides that we've seen earlier in terms of there's other options that come through, and I think from a buyer perspective, they've had to be quite pragmatic in how they kind of build the solutions.
Okay, but if you ask Stuart number 2 to take over the government, he's not going to do it because he's a very shrewd operator. So, Stuart, how long are you ready to, what maximum duration are you willing to sign for a PPA?
It's interesting. I completely agree with you. And you know, if those that are around when the FIT scheme finished and it was going to decimate the green economy, it was all going to be rubbish, and you couldn't deliver a solar farm for less than a pound a watt, and you couldn't do a commercial scheme for less than £1.20 a watt. Then all of a sudden, shortly after, you know, within a couple of years, you could deliver all sorts for much less cost, and you know that will happen.
Sorry, you very elegantly did not reply to my question. How long are you willing to go?
For when I take over the government.
No, I mean, are you willing to do 10 years, 7 years, 5 years?
It's a case of risk. You know, I mean, when I joined Merlin a couple of years ago, it was, 15, 20 years, we could do that. Talk to our accountants, 12, 18 months. It depends, it depends on the deal, or on the risk. I think we're more than happy to look at 5, 10, 15-year deals. That's certainly our expectation. But as people have been saying all day, the volatility in the market, how to price it, how to assess the risk, is sort of bringing those things a lot shorter. So the duration is not going to, if you like, be a huge driver. It's about what both parties can accept in terms of cost and risk. With, as you rightly say, Stuart, the investment needs to be repaid. But clearly, we don't want to end up in a position where we're overpaying for energy.
Is that what you see, Ayça, as well?
Maybe to Stuart number one. I would say, obviously, Stuart number two's main purpose is to make the business running. They like the investors and developers cannot expect from every buyer to switch to a prosumer mindset overnight. So that's not going to happen. Their priority of business is obviously doing what they do in their field. Energy is a product and service that they buy. And obviously, a certain amount of risk has to be shared. But the seller has to be mindful, because not all your assets are going to be utilized under CFDs. CFD is for a certain amount of portfolio, a certain amount of load maybe, but you need to diversify so that you can access and address to the majority of the market, maybe buyers like Stuart too as well, because there isn't a product one fits for all. There are different product types, like 5-year, 10-year, 15-year deals, depending on different volume appetites. So seller also has to be mindful and willing to differentiate. But I think there is still a middle ground in this market, because we still see deals happening. It's just a matter of managing expectations here, in my opinion.
Ayça, I've got a second question for you, and you're going to tell me if it's a stupid question or not.
Okay.
If you look at the gas industry,
okay,
they don't get those 15 years contract, or maybe they get 15 years on the volume, but never on the price.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that as the renewable energy grows and becomes major, somehow the financiers on the sell side need to understand that they cannot get always 15 years guaranteed price and volume, and somehow start understanding the dynamics of power markets and embed that risk? No, I mean, that's a question. So yes, no.
No, I don't find the question stupid. So I think there's a reason to it. In my opinion, yes, obviously, gas contracts are fluctuating, and people are taking positions depending on the price. And more markets will become more active in renewables. Now we are seeing in Europe, renewable is not a premium product anymore. Every market has a certain percentage of renewable in the mix. Currently in Gulf and other emerging markets, we see a bit more subsidy in renewables, but through time, that's gonna phase out. And it's gonna be more of a norm to expect volatile pricing, because intraday is already sort of like that, basically. Whomever pays gets the electricity. So I'm expecting a bit of more shift in the norms towards conventional natural gas market.
there's another aspect I want to touch because I've got a buyer and seller here. It's basically because at some point we produce non-dispatchable power. How do you see the sellers and the buyers' attitude in relation to, pay as produced, or shape it, or combining with balancing batteries? I mean, who should do that? Like, would be Stuart J. You say just bring it on and I can take care of it, or I want a very perfect shape and this is your problem. So can we have a bit of a debate around that, please?
I mean, what the buyer wants. Me personally, I think it's the shaping thing has got a lot of merit to it. We can't be wasting energy. It's cost a lot to produce it. It has some value and things like that. So yeah, I think the shaping thing is important. I do think that the metering both ends is important. So not just about what you've generated, but what we've actually consumed is also really important.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I mean, I think as the corporates have picked up renewable procurement and built up different approaches of how they've done things, I think there has to be a level of knowing what the building blocks they've created and what they then are. But if you look at one of the largest corporate buyers in the world has recently in this market appointed somebody to effectively manage their part of their portfolio in this respect, and so it's complex to deal with. And I don't think for most folks they would be able to really, unless you're going to build an entire team to be able to do that. It's not core business. So I think that's a challenge. So I think that there's probably an emerging role there for somebody to do the kind of managing piece around that. Just to kind of talk about, just to go back to your gas kind of point and contracts, I think one of the elements I think in the market is that from a project financing perspective, lenders do take already a large amount of merchant risk into a project. Because, on average, you're looking at 60, 70, 80% offtake that's fixed. So there's a residual component during the 10 to 15 year period that is in merchant. And then, of course, the rest of it's merchant. There'll be a merchant tail on the debt sizing versus the length of the contract. So I think that's already moved quite substantially in the last 5 or so years. There's maybe some markets where at least a couple of years ago, they were looking at doing almost a full kind of merchant kind of lending position. Probably the person that's part of there's a banker that's here probably gasps at that in terms of doing that for, let's say, a large offshore wind farm in Europe, fully merchant. Probably not, but it has incrementally been moving on the lender front.
I would like a bit to conclude and start thinking a bit higher, because and I really appreciate the Renewables team for inviting me, but I think the question could be a bit refined, because sellers, okay, they're pretty much all the same. Some sellers are small, some have big portfolio, very sophisticated, but buyers, I mean, come on, there's a total rainbow of buyers, from those huge data centers with teams which are crazy good and have all this algorithm and so on, down to heavy industry who it's it's very difficult, high volume, low margin, down to specialty, but can be the food, can be healthcare, retail business. So in fact, the buyers, you've got the whole spectrum. And so how do you assess that spectrum of buyers, and do you think they all have the same drivers?
Yeah, so I think buy side is definitely a tale of its own, because as you said, there are a rainbow of buyers. There are unicorns in the market who already switched to that prosumer mindset, and those data centers, hyperscalers are driving the market by basically setting their own sustainable standards, even their own accounting standards of how renewable they want to get. They basically buy renewable power, they set the rules by themselves, and they basically rank them rank themselves according to the targets they set. Like they set the game and they play it. And for smaller buyers compared to hyperscalers, obviously there is a bit of publicity element, like how publicly you would be known for driving renewable electricity. And that's again from RE100 signatories to SBTI. There is also a wide range of that. I don't think like even within that segment, you cannot distinguish between real sustainability driving companies to box tickers, because obviously in that segment, if you're not like a market maker, you are just trying to deliver the bare minimum at a reasonable cost. But then there is low flyers who are basically following the market. And if they don't really need to be in the conversation of renewables, they won't. So I think that is a big chunk of the market still. Even like when we are talking about data center segments specifically, we are only seeing that 50% who are hyperscalers. The other 50%, it's mixed. Like some of them are box tickers buying certificates only, but the others aren't doing anything. And they are still trying to buy more power wherever available, because it's basically a growing electricity demand. And if they're going to make a choice about like, should I buy more power to fulfill like a electricity demand, like store more data for AI or stuff, or should I buy certificates? Some data centers are making that choice. So yeah, there are all sorts of unicorns, rainbows in the market. And I think it's very difficult to set one standard, again, fits for all. Obviously, from European perspective, there is a supply security mindset that European buyers are more converging towards. But still within that, because there isn't like a binding law or a reporting standards, like I think the most binding was CSRD and it's already pushed back. So there has to be more and more mechanisms inviting those low flyers into being market participants.
Good. So, Stuart, close Stuart, not far away. I'm trying to be nice. Would you say, as a seller, you take a different approach by the type of buyers you have in front of you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and actually, it's quite interesting. Depends. I think there's a difference. Depends on what type of seller you are as well. You know, I've worked in different places with different strategies and different kind of focus ultimately in terms of their asset base. And, you know, there's an element of what is your timeline? I said earlier that you need to be quick. That was mentioned earlier. I think the kind of pace of getting a deal done can be really important. And maturity of the off-taker definitely comes into it. And ultimately, of course, if, you know, going back to the return question, if you're driving towards who's going to give you the higher price. So, you know, there's an element of how do you blend that equation together to look at where you're going to get the sale to. You do not probably have the luxury of having, let's say, a 24-month period to chase something down. You know, but that said, you know, if it's really about, as I mentioned, partnership and rather than procurement, then, you know, having the partnership in place to be able to go and do that can be ultimately beneficial for everybody involved.
Stuart.
At the end.
Now that you have executed a certain number of PPAs, and I guess they kind of look pretty much all the same-ish, well, yeah. within certain boundaries, is it probably easier for you to come to the market and say, okay, that's the zone I'm comfortable to, you know, the framework I'm comfortable to buy in, so don't even bother, you know, losing your time and my time with like, you know, crazy proposals?
We just launched a framework, and we worked with our lawyers to take what we've learned from the three that we'd executed. That's one in obviously California, Italy, and one in the UK. And we took that to form like a principles document of based on what we'd agreed with people, what the market had accepted from us, both in terms of the PPA and the lease. And we put that together in a document, sent it out to 5 suppliers, and asked them to sort of give some feedback. And across the 5, and credit to them, across the 5, no one has disagreed with their principles. There's obviously been some tailoring where, of course, lawyers like to have their own, use their own words and phrases. Yeah, clearly all lawyers have their own ways of doing things, but the principles of we've all agreed to. And with all of those 5, it's very much a partnership sort of approach rather than a procurement. We are looking for a long-term partner in that. I mean, we realise, yes, people flip these things, and there's good reasons for doing that. But the agreements are there for the long term. Clearly, there's a bit of mileage that people can get off of working with Merlin. It's a good brand to associate with, and it's going very well at the minute. Invite me back in a year, we'll see. But so far, we've had some very good positive responses.
Okay. I get signed that we are nearing the end of the panel. So maybe each of you, what should the audience remember from your intervention? Give me just 2 or 3 key points, please.
Returns, partnership.
Okay, good. You delivered. Excellent. Ayça, please.
Regardless of where the negotiation ends, I think business case is always going to matter. So nobody's going to sign an unviable deal at any cost. Obviously, we love the environment. But I still don't think that if there isn't a business case, people will not do that. But I think PPA markets are shifting, and it's getting more exciting because now we will have more products like battery storage. There will be more intraday liquidity. I think there is more value on the table where people are willing. So I think PPA markets are gonna stay, but it's just gonna transform. So yeah, I'm hopeful about this market.
I mean, I completely agree with Stuart. It is all about partnership, and you've got to find the right partners. Lots of people are out there, or some people are out there, and I'm not being negative towards them. It's just all about the money, and if that's the relationship that works for your business, then great. If it's not the relationship, then you need to find yourself the right partner, because at that point the negotiations will be quicker. And my one thing is get the negotiations done quick, because I think someone said earlier on, the things that can change, that all impact the price, and no one wants to have to renegotiate the price 6 months, 9 months, a year down the road. So get the legal stuff done and out of the way, and then focus on the good bit, which is getting the thing built.
And can we all agree that batteries are going to be a game changer?
Yeah. It was a
okay.
simple question.
Well,
I
thank
agree.
the audience for their great quality of listening, and I thank the panel. Thank you, guys.